alive. Custer. General Custer, he's still alive.
President Grant. Sir?
I'm busy now, Pruitt.
It's Custer, sir. They say he'll live.
Damn! 220 men killed and he lives? Custer lives? Why? Why Custer? Good Lord, the man hasn't even the decency to die of his wounds.
Mr. President.
Now he's going to tell the press what a great hero he was out in the high Yellowstone country.
Mr. President.
Half his men wiped out. Good, seasoned soldiers dead now because of Custer.
Oh, he was outnumbered.
Well, of course he was. The idiot split up his troops, did every other damn fool thing wrong. The colossal stupidity of that pompous ass. He's been a thorn in my side for over 3 years now.
That, I'm afraid, is well known.
Testified against me in congressional hearings. Accused me of graft and corruption. Me? Can you imagine? The ambition. My God, the ambition of the man.
Mr. President.
Now, I'm telling you, we've got to get rid of him now and for good.
May I suggest, sir, that we move very carefully. Now, it's my opinion a court-martial is definitely called for, and I'll make the appointments myself. Is that satisfactory?
Good.
I would also suggest that we hold it in New York. It's more convenient for everyone, and the press especially.
Mr. President, I feel it only fair to warn you that you are taking a great risk. Now, some people are going to call this court-martial a vendetta. Think about it, sir. A man's a hero to half the country, while the Democrats are already talking about him for the next presidential election.
Well, if that man moves in here, God help us all.
Now, Phil makes a good point, Mr. President. We've got to try to avoid any talk of a personal vendetta.
Yes, how?
Well, I think I have an idea. If Phil will go along with it. Well, General Philip Sheridan will testify in Custer's behalf. That way, they can't say the Army's out to crucify him.
Good. Splendid. We're all agreed then. Phil? Yes, sir. Now, I'll tell you something. That man loves the Army as much as we do, but the Army can no longer afford him. Well, so be it. That's all for now, gentlemen.
Mr. President. Come in.
Excuse me, General Sherman? Your adjutant told me it would be all right if I... Major Asa Gardner.
I know who you are. What is it you want?
I respectfully request...
Stand over there where I can see you.
Yes, sir. I respectfully request that I be relieved of trying this case for the Army.
Request denied.
Sir, I'm a staff officer, a claims officer, a city man. What right have I to try a line officer in the field of combat? Not to mention a national hero.
Request denied.
Sir.
No. By God, we need the best we can get. And they tell me that's you.
Sir.
We're going to win this case, understand? You're going to win it for us, right?
General, I
Because if we don't win it, if we don't find Custer guilty, I know a certain major who will no longer be a major. He will, in fact, be a second lieutenant serving out the rest of his miserable hitch in the most godforsaken hellhole the Army can find for him. And that is a sacred promise. Do I now make myself clear, sir?
Yes, sir. Absolutely clear, sir.
Then get on with it.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Well,
Has Colonel Custer's counsel been chosen as yet?
Name's Jacobson, Alan Jacobson from Detroit. He's been the Custer lawyer for years.
Yes, sir, I know. I've heard of him. It's going to be a hell of a fight.
You got the order.
Yes, sir. It's in the case.
Excuse me.
Must be Major Gardner.
Yes, sir. I take it you're Alan Jacobson.
Yes, indeed. They tell me you're one of the Army's brightest lawyers.
You're not exactly unknown yourself,
Yeah.
sir.
Perhaps they misjudged us both. In any case, all I ask is a fair hearing.
With your help, sir, we shall keep the proceedings in order. Get the defense at Cuspidor.
All rise.
You see this?
Get 2 more Cuspidors.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Because of the presence of so many ladies here today, let there be no smoking in the courtroom. The court is now open. We are here to ascertain certain charges made against Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer for conduct at Little Bighorn. Are there any challenges or objections to any members of the court at this time?
Sir, I would like to object to everyone who is not a cavalry officer.
Mr. Jacobson, you may challenge for cause, but branch of service is not a cause. Any further challenges?
If the court please, I wish to challenge myself. My oldest son, John, served with Custer at Little Bighorn.
Company L, 7th Cavalry, I believe, sir.
Yes, a company which the accused commanded himself. There were no survivors, except one. I was appointed to this court over my objections. I asked to be excused.
You may step down, Colonel Crittenden.
Knew it. I knew he'd do it.
If there are no further challenges, let us proceed to the charges. Major Gardner.
The charges brought forth by General Alfred Terry read violation 21st Article of War, disobedience of orders. Specification number 1. Aforesaid officer, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, ordered to proceed to a point south of Little Bighorn, did willfully disobey by turning off the trail directly into Little Bighorn and thus precipitating loss of men and animals. Charge 2. Violation 42nd Article of War, creating a hazard to his command through negligence. Failure to make reconnaissance of terrain and the enemy prior to commitment of his command. Charge 3, violation 92nd Article of War, conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline.
The charges have been read before the accused. Let the record so indicate.
Mr. President, the defense moves that all charges against the defendant be dismissed.
On what ground?
On the ground, sir, that only a commander in the field and facing the enemy can make a proper judgment of the actions to be taken there.
Motion is denied.
Mr. President, I must remind the court that only General Custer was in that position at that time.
I objected the designation of General Custer. That designation was a temporary appointment of the Civil War. His present rank is Lieutenant Colonel.
My apologies. I'm so unaccustomed to the ritual of military court-martial.
I hope that my ignorance will not reflect upon my client.
It might reflect a good deal less, sir, if your client wore the proper insignia of his rank.
Major, the objection has been noted. How does the defendant plead?
Sir, not guilty.
Proceed with the first witness.
Captain E.W. Smith. Captain Smith, there's just one thing I want to know. Whether or not Colonel Custer obeyed his orders at Little Bighorn. Were you with him when those orders were given?
Yes, sir.
What did General Terry order Colonel Custer to do?
To go up the Indian Trail and then on past it, so he'd be south of the Little Bighorn Valley.
To go past the trail, not to turn onto it and attack, but to go past it.
Yes, sir.
And did Colonel Custer follow those orders?
No, sir. He turned onto the trail and he attacked.
Thank you, Captain. Your witness, Mr. Jacobson.
I have here a written order from which I shall quote. It is impossible to give you any definite instructions in regard to this movement. The department places too much confidence in your ability to impose upon you precise orders which might hamper your action. I believe that's worded quite clearly, don't you, Captain?
Perhaps, but it didn't go as far as his oral instructions.
Well, which carries more weight, the oral or the written instruction?
Well, that depends.
No, Captain, please, just answer the question. Which carries more weight? The spoken word, which is gone like that, or the written document, which can be passed down for generations?
Well, I suppose the written word is more permanent.
Thank you, Captain. That will be all.
Captain, you're excused.
Captain Boyle, I understand you rode out from the fort with Colonel Custer to Little Bighorn. Were you told then the nature of your mission?
Get the hostiles. Round them up, bring them back to the reservation. As for the whole shebang, it was all about.
Was Little Bighorn a long march from the fort?
Oh, too damn long. Well, excuse me if I profane there, but that march was a living hell. Not that we didn't start off real smart. The band out playing the Gary Owen and us all keeping our carbines handy.
You've served with Colonel Custer before.
Yes, sir. Fine officer. As good a rider as ever sat a horse.
In regard to horses, then, what was his nickname among his troops?
Well, horse killer. But that's only because he pushed him hard. He demanded no less from his horses than his troops.
How long was this march?
About 100 miles in 4 days.
Without adequate water, grain, and rest.
That sounds like a summation, Mr. President.
Are you objecting? Never mind. Strike the question. Were there any desertions on the way?
Oh, no, sir. Not with Custer. Well, not after Kansas. He gave orders there to kill deserters. Or not that I ever followed through. I didn't have the stomach for it.
Did he ever say to you just how many hostiles he expected to find at Little Bighorn?
Well, he thought maybe 1,500. But our own Crow scouts, though, they told of a great Indian village up ahead with both Sioux and Cheyenne.
And how did Custer respond to this information?
He didn't believe him.
Thank you, Captain. That is all.
I take it, Captain Boyle, your men were tired after such a march.
They were exhausted.
Exhausted? Wouldn't that mean they could hardly move at all?
Near to that.
Why didn't you report this condition to the men to your superiors? Or perhaps you did.
No, sir.
A condition that would impair their combat effectiveness, and you did not report it?
No, sir.
Isn't that the duty of a commander in your position?
I suppose, sir, but at the time...
Oh, at the time. At the time, you didn't think it was worth reporting. It was only later, afterwards, when the whole thing failed, you were looking for someone to blame. Then you suddenly discovered your men were too exhausted to fight.
Objection.
I withdraw. Now, Captain Boyle, you're sworn to tell the truth here. You tell me, as a good soldier, weren't you itching to get in there and fight? No matter how big that Indian encampment was, you did want to get in there and fight, did you not?
Yes, sir.
How was that, Captain?
Yes, sir.
No further question?
Captain, you're excused.
Scout goes ahead from the Crow Nation.
Do you affirm that the evidence you shall give in the case now in hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Chikawa, Kwaituk.
He does, Mr. President.
Proceed.
Gentlemen, this man was one of Colonel Custer's scouts on the Long March. He knows Colonel Custer well.
Yellow hair.
Would you tell this court what you reported to Colonel Custer that day?
I say, too many pony ahead. Many Sioux. Many cut finger. Too many.
What are cut fingers?
Cheyenne. Cut off finger from enemy. Dry good. Make fine necklace. This finger.
Yes. Well, what happened when you told Colonel Custer of the overwhelming force that you faced?
Yellow hair. He laugh. Me. He say, me, old woman. I say, too many Sioux. Too many cut finger. Not fight now. Wait, fight later. Too many.
Your witness.
Well, I don't believe I can elicit any further information of value from this gentleman who appears to consider himself an expert on the commitment of United States troops. Thank you anyway, Major.
That is all.
Too many, yellow hair. Too many.
Court will recess for 10 minutes.
Major Reno, you were Colonel Custer's second in command, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Would you please tell this court what happened when you arrived in the area after your long march?
Yes, sir. Custer rode down from where he had been observing and said that the Indian scouts claimed to have seen a very large, hostile village in the valley. Custer told me he didn't believe it. He said we'd move on into the valley because he was afraid the Indians would escape.
Go on.
Custer then told me to charge the village. That was the only instruction I had from him all day.
Did it seem strange to you that he didn't believe his own scouts about the village, and now he was asking you to charge it?
Objection. It's a leading question which calls for an opinion.
Allow me to rephrase the question.
Please do. You may take your seat, Mr. Jacobson.
All right, you were to charge the village. What were your thoughts?
I didn't know what we'd be up against, or what we'd meet up ahead.
You didn't press the issue?
Not with Colonel Custer. You do what he tells you to.
Major Reno, are you afraid of Colonel Custer?
I'm not personally afraid of him, or of any man, sir. But as my commanding officer, I was. Anyone who's ever served under him is frightened of what he may do. He is cruel and unjust.
I object. Sustained.
And Custer's brother Tom, who served and died with you there, was he afraid of him too?
Mr. President,
Yes, he was afraid.
Mr. Gardner, I will not condone such conduct in this court. Objection is sustained, is sustained.
Sorry, I heard no objection.
The court will disregard the last question and answer.
Would the court clarify which question and which answer?
I will not repeat it, Major. And I advise you, you are in serious trouble if you do not move on with the witness.
Did Colonel Custer ever state specifically that he would support you?
Yes, the whole outfit. Only the regiment was broken up into 3 battalions. We had no contact with each other. I felt certain as we moved on that we were moving closer to an overwhelming number of hostiles. We came out on a high plateau where we could see the valley beyond. I couldn't believe it. It's larger than anything I'd ever imagined. It seemed to stretch out into the valley for miles.
Did you notify Colonel Custer of this?
I had no notion of his whereabouts by then. My orders were clear. Attack the village. We rode to the attack. A swarm of warriors rode out to meet us, but we kept right on. Only then another screaming bunch came from out of nowhere with heavy rifle fire. I could see right then that any offensive action against such a body of men was impossible.
Did you think a trap had been laid for you?
No, there was no trap. We surprised them, that was certain. They behaved as anyone might at a sudden, unexpected danger.
In your estimation, Major Reno, how many warriors rode against your men?
I'd say about 1,000.
And how many men did you command there?
102.
How many warriors were in that valley that day?
Oh, I'd have to say at least 7,000.
Go on.
Well, we got to the river and got across somehow, what was left of us. And that's where Captain Benteen found us. We set up a new position of defense together.
Major Reno, I know just how difficult it must be for you to relive that dreadful day, and I'm grateful for your testimony. No more questions?
I wonder, sir, if you can remember just what General Custer told you.
Objection, Mr. President. Once again, Defense Counsel chooses to refer to Colonel Custer as a general. Have we not agreed to use his present rank?
Oh, slip of the tongue, Major. My apologies. Again. Now, just what was it that Colonel Custer asked you to do?
He asked me to charge the village.
And did you charge the village?
Well,
What does charge mean?
ride over it.
Did you ride over it? Or did you stop, sir? Far short of the village. Isn't it a fact that you never got near that village that Custer told you to charge?
We were close.
But you did not take the action that Custer told you to take. In fact, you disobeyed his orders, and therefore, you could have caused the whole plan to fail.
What plan?
Is Mr. Jacobson making his closing statement, or is he questioning the witness?
Mr. Jacobson, you know the rules. Make your points from testimony.
Sir. What was your condition when Captain Benteen joined you later on?
Well, we suffered badly. The men were...
No, I mean your personal condition, sir. Were you distraught?
I don't think I'd call it distraught.
Isn't it true that you felt the need of a stimulant?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you carry a small pint-sized metal flask in your saddlebag?
I often do.
And isn't it a well-known fact that you're addicted to alcohol?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, what you carry in flask?
Sometimes brandy, sometimes whiskey.
What was that?
Whiskey, sir.
And what was in the flask that day?
I wasn't drunk, sir. I was not drunk.
Major Reno, from the last time that you saw Custer, did you ever consider riding to his aid?
I had no notion where he was. I didn't know that he needed help, and I couldn't offer it if he had.
Now, just a moment. Wouldn't his very absence indicate that he was in trouble? At least to an officer in full possession of his faculties.
We were beaten.
With Benteen coming to your aid with fresh troops, isn't it a fact, sir, that you had already lost control of your faculties by then, that you were incapable of command?
I object. I'm going to take this, Major.
Thank you, General. Now, Major, can it be that those hours were so confused in your mind that you cannot relate what happened even now?
It was an overwhelming experience.
But you were in command, sir.
It was horrible. Terrifying.
But you were afraid? A leader of men in battle? And he was afraid? And this is the man that's on trial here. I have no further questions. Officer.
Redirect.
Major Reno, please answer clearly and carefully. I know this is difficult for you, but please tell us what happened when you felt overwhelmed. Was it the general confusion of the moment?
Dad. You see, when we tried to cross the river, the hostiles were all around us. My men were caught there, with the river turning to blood beneath us, red with blood. One of my men, right next to me, he was badly hit in the stomach. He threw his arms around me as he fell. He almost pulled me down into the water. But just then, Lieutenant Haber, he came up and he pulled me free, helped me to mount up again. He was leaning close to me, very close, and suddenly his face blew up. It was blown apart by a round. I couldn't see.
Why couldn't you see?
Well, because his head exploded into my face, covered my eyes.
I have no more questions, Mr. President.
Witness is excused. The court will be in recess for 10 minutes.
Real pretty, ain't it? Jefferson Clinton, sir, at your service. I'm an old soldier and proud of it. Fought with the 3rd Arkansas in the war.
A rebel regiment.
That's it, Major. Then, of course, later I served with Custer in the 7th Cavalry. I lost this to the Little Bighorn. I tell you something, though. Sometimes I close my good eye, I swear I can still see out of the one that ain't there.
You appear to be doing fine.
Well, a man can always find means, Major, if you follow my drift. Fact is, I might just have some information that could be useful to a man who is making a case against General Custer.
I don't think that
Company B, 7th Cavalry. I was posted to the Custers. I was their orderly. Yeah, I used to see them playing these horrible games, tearing around like a bunch of kids. See, Custer had this racetrack built for him at Fort Lincoln, and we had real horse races and picnics, and him and his brother Tom, and his brother-in-law Jim Calhoun. He's dead now. Little Bighorn.
Mr. Quinn.
Ladies all loved the General. Yeah, there used to be dances there on Saturday night, and sometimes... You may not believe this, but the General used to give out locks of his hair to every lady present. Kind of a gift, so to speak.
If you'll excuse me, sir.
Hold on a minute. Happened to come across some letters the General wrote to Mrs. Custer and vice versa. Perhaps you recognize the handwriting. Here, listen to this. My darling standby. Can you imagine that? Calling Mrs. Custer a woman like that. Stand by.
Attended Wallach's Theater last night where I met the beautiful actress Gertrude Kellogg. As she has apparently taken a strong fancy to me, I have invited her to dinner at my hotel room. There. This one. My darling, stand by. For the past 2 weeks, the beautiful girl has walked past my hotel room trying to attract my attention. She has. And I followed her home.
These letters, sir, they're all of this nature.
What you might call a little saucy. Am I right, sir?
Take them away. And I must tell you, Mr. Quinton, I think you are a common thief and a blackmailer. If you ever come to me again in any capacity, I will have you arrested.
Now, Major, nobody has to do with opportunities to present themselves, but blackmail? You said blackmail. That's an ugly word, Major. It's a hard word. I never asked nothing for these letters. Just trying to see justice, that's all.
Good day, sir.
Colonel Gibbon, can you estimate the size of the Indian village?
No, sir, no estimate. I can tell you, though. I had it counted. 2,143 teepees. Now, that meant at least 8,000 warriors.
No further questions?
Your witness?
Colonel, I take it you were surprised that Custer decided to make a fight of it that day.
I was, because Custer had specific orders from General Terry.
Yes. It was part of an overall plan in which you all had specific orders.
That is right, sir.
Get my adjutant up here at once.
Mr. Jacobson, is there a reason for this interruption?
We're ready to continue, sir. Excuse me. Now, sir, you said that you had an overall plan. There were 3 columns to converge on a given day, but Custer attacked a day early.
That is right.
Well, isn't it true, sir, that under the same plan, you arrived a day late?
Well, yes. But by that time, the battle was already lost, so it didn't make any difference to the final...
Thank you very much. No further questions.
We kept on looking for Custer, and then at the top of this kind of knoll where the dead were sort of bunched together, we found him just sitting there unconscious against his dead horse. He was all sunburned, and there was a lot of blood everywhere. But he was still alive. He still had his scalp intact. But we brought him down at once. Go on. Well, then we found the remains of Companies C, F, and E, all massacred in column. One of the dead turned out to be the general's brother, Tom. I recognized him even though his face was pretty badly smashed up. The Sioux squaws had stripped him, you understand. They disemboweled him and then severed his genitals.
Mr. President, Mrs. Custer appears to have fainted. May we recess for a few moments?
We stand in recess.
Smelling salt, please. Anyone?
I want to see Major Gardner, Mr. Jacobson, in the anteroom at once. The court's recessed until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. To have private letters between Custer and his wife published at a time like this. It's unconscionable. Mr. Jacobson, I ask you first. Have you ever seen these letters before?
No, sir, I haven't.
Major Gardner? Well, sir, before you respond, I feel it only fair to tell you that the New York Herald claims you have had access to the letters.
Yes, sir, that's true. Perhaps the only truth the New York Herald has ever printed. But you see, the fact is, I thought they were irrelevant.
Irrelevant?
A man named Quinton showed them to me, and I didn't report the encounter because I saw no purpose in it. He must have taken them to the newspaper.
You saw no purpose. Do you realize the New York Herald is accusing this government of connivance? Of attempting to destroy George Custer through this court-martial? A political vendetta of which this court is part? Mr. Jacobson, do you feel this might affect your case?
No, sir, I see nothing in the letters that would have any bearing on the case.
Very well. I intend to visit the New York News, the Herald, and determine if you, sir, are indeed clear of any wrongdoing. If you are not clear, we may have to call a mistrial. That's all.
Just seems like there's nothing sacred anymore, Mr. Jacobson.
Not much.
Well, if the papers can print these letters. I just can't help wondering if Major Gardner's the one who got them published.
No.
Well, how can you be sure?
Not enough meanness in the man. And as to the letters, I'm not at all surprised.
Oh?
George Custer is a rutting hog. He always has been. Disgraceful.
How does she put up with it?
I think you'd have to know Elizabeth to answer that question, and nobody does. Not even George, I suspect. Of course, I've got my own theory as to that, which I'll keep to myself.
Be seated. Yesterday, there was an unfortunate publication of certain letters belonging to the accused. Before proceeding today, I wish to announce that I have satisfied myself that no party to this trial has been in any way responsible. This trial may proceed without suspicion over any officer attendant to it.
General Terry, you commanded all troops in Montana, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Including those of Colonel Custer?
Yes, sir.
Would you please tell this court, General, whether or not Colonel Custer followed your orders at Little Bighorn?
He did not. He was sent to bring the Indians back to the reservation. He plunged ahead and he attacked a day early. Failed to allow for any coordination with the other columns in the field. He did, in fact, doom the entire plan to failure.
Thank you, General. No more questions?
It's a great honor to meet you, General Terry. Great honor indeed.
Thank you.
Did I hear you say that there was some concern about the hostiles escaping?
Of course. The whole plan was to keep them from escaping.
Yes. Well, in that case, if Custer thought that the Indians were trying to run away, he should have tried to stop them, correct?
They were not running.
Well, was Custer to know that, sir? You and everyone else have been harping for weeks about Indians running away. Isn't that true? General, come. I have letters and telegrams. Prove it. You could save us so much time.
Yes, it was true.
You wrote 2 reports on that action, sir, in a very short period of time. One in no way critical of Custer at all.
Right.
The second, however, most critical indeed. Could you tell us why?
But on the second one, I had time to reflect.
Is it not true, sir, that when you wrote this second report, you had time to realize that someone had to be made to appear to be at fault, else you yourself could be blamed?
Mr. President, I strongly object to any accusations here against General Terry.
I remind you, Mr. Jacobson, General Terry is not the officer on trial here.
Maybe you should be. No further questions.
Quiet! General Terry, if you please. Did or did not Colonel Custer disobey your orders at Little Bighorn?
He did.
Thank you.
You're excused now, Alfred. May I at this time thank you personally for doing what must be a very distasteful duty.
You are most welcome, John.
Then you can keep that exchange out of the record. Major Gardner, you may proceed with the Army's case.
Mr. President, the government rests.
Very well. In that case, Mr. Jacobson, do you wish a recess, or are you prepared to begin the defense?
If it please the court, I have my witnesses standing by, and at this time I should like to call upon Mrs. Linda Slaughter.
You affirm that the evidence you shall give in the case now in hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Mrs. Slaughter, you are then, or rather you were, postmistress in Bismarck, Port of Territory.
That's right.
Did you know General Custer there?
Oh, I did indeed. General Custer and I were both deeply concerned with corruption in the Indian Bureau. People who would cheat the Indians and the troopers and then share the profits with those in high political office, those who had appointed them.
Did you help General Custer in trying to expose this corruption?
I'm afraid my involvement had to be kept secret for fear of reprisals. However, the secret did become known during congressional hearings in Washington, D.C., and I was dismissed.
And who replaced you?
A very intimate friend of President Grant's.
Yeah. Now, were there reprisals against anyone else who tried to expose corruption in the Grant administration?
Objection, Mr. President. No evidence has ever been presented proving corruption in the Grant administration.
I'll withdraw the question, Major, and this charming lady is now your witness.
Mrs. Slaughter, have you ever been a guest in the Custer home?
Many times.
Has Colonel Custer ever been a guest in your home?
Yes,
A little louder, please.
he has.
On these visits, was Mrs. Custer always present?
Mr. President, I resent the foul implications being made here against this fine woman.
Calm down, Mr. Jacobson. Please put the knife down before you slice off somebody's ear.
Mr. President, I'm simply trying to show that this witness has more interest in the case than the facts might indicate.
I totally resent that remark.
Is that an objection?
It is, sir.
Sustained. Proceed.
If you will, then, Madam, tell us whether Custer's ever given you a lock of his hair.
I beg your pardon.
I warn you, Major, you're in danger here. The court will ignore the last question.
I take further objection to the use of the word madam. The Major knows this lady's name.
Forgive me, but I would have thought Madam a perfectly normal and polite form of address. Unless, of course, Mr. Jacobson attaches some other meaning to the word in the case of this witness.
You will put none of the last exchange into the record.
Since this witness thinks Colonel Custer such a compassionate human being with the welfare of the Indian on his mind, are you familiar with the Battle of the Washita?
I am. It was one of General Custer's greatest victories.
Yes, over 100 warriors claimed by Custer to have been killed there. Did you know that?
Not the number.
However, official reports now reveal that Custer only killed about 20 warriors. All the rest were women and children.
I know nothing about that. But surely it must be a well-known fact that in a battle, oftentimes innocent people are caught in the crossfire.
A well-known fact. Your compassion does you credit, Mrs. Slaughter. I'm through with this witness.
Major Gardner.
Sir.
The record. I denounce your conduct with this woman. It is an embarrassment to the court and all concerned. You may be excused, Mrs. Slaughter.
Mr. President, although I had planned to call another witness at this time, I have just been informed that General Sheridan is on Governor's Island at this moment. And I would like to take this opportunity to call this esteemed officer to the stand, if it pleases the court.
Proceed.
Yo. My great honor, then, to call to the stand Lieutenant General Philip Sheridan.
Do you affirm that the evidence you shall give in the case now in hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Be seated, please, General.
Now then, General, to begin with, you just tell the court why you're here.
For one reason, and one reason only. To let the truth come out, so the court can decide. Perhaps I can add to that truth.
Now, as overall commander of the 76 campaign, can you tell the court why it failed?
I will not discuss tactics. I'll give you the major reason, as I saw it. The major reason only. The Army was misled. Instead of facing a few hundred warriors, we faced many thousands. I suspect because the Bureau of Indian Affairs was ashamed to admit how many had actually jumped the reservation.
Yes, sir. Now, General, could you tell us, in your opinion, what is ambition?
A state of mind to better oneself.
Is ambition in the profession of arms unusual?
Common. Every soldier should be interested in bettering himself.
Now, what of political ambitions?
It's a bug we all get bitten by from time to time. Doing little harm if controlled. In fact, it's healthy if controlled.
Would you say that Colonel Custer was politically ambitious?
No, sir. Although he did involve himself in certain congressional hearings, which I thought ill-advised.
Yes. Wasn't he relieved of his command because he offended the president at those hearings?
I can't answer for Grant.
Thank you, General. I deeply appreciate your coming here and providing us with this important testimony.
Do you have any questions, Major Gardner? If not,
Yes, sir. I do.
Proceed.
I have here, General, a copy of a dispatch already marked an exhibit, sent to you personally at your headquarters 2 months before Colonel Custer left for Little Bighorn. It states specifically that scouts reported no less than 2,000 lodges in the valley of the Bighorn. A common estimate of 4 warriors to 1 lodge would put that number at 8,000. It's signed by General Alfred Terry.
Let me see that.
Of course.
I assumed the estimate was an error.
No, you assumed then, General, or do you assume now that you're confronted with the dispatch once more?
Major! You will not presume
Mr. President, in view of the witness's distress, I will withdraw the last question. Now, General Sheridan, did you agree with President Grant's decision to relieve Colonel Custer of his Dakota command?
I agreed with the president.
Thank you, General. Now then, when Custer came to you, you refused to intercede, I take it.
Right. It was between Grant and Custer.
But Custer had been one of your favorites during the war and even afterwards on the plains, am I correct?
He got the job done.
Why, then would you not intercede for him in a time of trouble?
I told you. It was a matter between Grant and Custer.
Is it not true, however, that you felt his actions had indeed caused too much embarrassment for the Army?
No.
In fact, hadn't your disillusion with him begun even before the war was over when you discovered he made false reports?
I don't know what you're talking about, Major.
Allow me to refresh your memory, General. The Battle of Five Forks. Do you not recall that after Custer had captured a rebel baggage train, he reported to you that it had been defended by a full Confederate division? And in fact, it had been defended by only a half a dozen worn-out cannons.
Sometimes he was a little over-enthusiastic.
Over-enthusiastic? Wouldn't a better term be liar?
No! And I will not sit here and listen to you put words in my mouth. Do you understand that, Major?
I do apologize, General. I had certainly not intended to put words into your mouth. It was not you, but I, who mentioned that non-existent Southern division that the brave Custer subdued.
Mr. Frank!
Oh, all right, Mr. Jacobson, I'll withdraw that last. And I'm finished with this witness.
He may be finished with Sheridan, but I have a strong feeling Sheridan isn't finished with him.
Excuse now, General. The court will not allow any further distractions or outbursts. We will not... You may be seated now, Colonel.
Where's my hat? In the vestibule.
Mr. Jacobson. Sir? Let's get on with it.
I think it would be fair to say any Army officer should be classified as an expert in Indian fighting. Colonel Miles is that man.
Thank you, sir.
Did you approve General Custer's conduct with Little Bighorn?
I would have done exactly the same thing, sir.
Thank you, sir. With that statement, I see no reason to detain you any longer.
Oh, one moment, sir.
I beg your pardon.
I have with me certain evidence which will clearly indicate that General Terry gave Custer full discretion on the battlefield. Gave it to him verbally before Custer set out. It's true this evidence may cast some doubts on what General Terry may have said. However, I
say you have evidence?
I do, sir.
You may introduce it.
Just a moment, sir. I would like to have an opportunity to see this.
Let me see it, Colonel.
Mr. President, I'm not sure you have the right to look at this material.
Hand it to me. Colonel. Where'd you come by this affidavit?
It was given to me 2 days ago, sir, on my way here from Chicago.
Anyway, now, sir.
Why did not the defense know about this before?
So there wasn't time. I just arrived in New York this morning.
Sir, I cannot introduce this.
It's a sworn statement. Why not?
I will not introduce it, sir.
And the court will. Colonel Miles, you will read the affidavit.
Yes. Mary Adams, housekeeper, colored, personally came before me and who, being sworn, stated that in the employ of General Custer, she accompanied him on military expeditions in the capacity of cook. That she left Fort Lincoln with Custer in the spring of '76, traveling to the Montana Territory, where he met with General Terry. She overheard General Terry say to General Custer the following: "Use your own judgment and do what you think is best. It is up to you." This affidavit submitted and sworn before me and signed by Mary Adams by her mark.
Mr. President, this unexpected revelation, not only to me but to others as well, requires some research on my part. I would respectfully ask the court for an opportunity to do that.
Very well. Witness is excused. Cause and recess till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Colonel Miles. I would like to know where you dug up that affidavit at this late date. Why didn't you tell me about it before?
Before what?
Before that damn fool dramatic display in the courtroom.
Sir, I have no more information to give you, and I don't wish to talk about it.
Henry, tell the general I'm here, will you?
Step in, sir.
Hold that and wait right there.
Mr. Jacobson, I'm sorry, but my husband is resting now. He cannot be disturbed.
And perhaps you can tell me. Now, what do you know about this Mary Adams affidavit?
We know nothing about it.
Do you believe it's true?
Mr. Jacobson, this entire affair has exhausted us. I have utter faith in you and any course of action you wish to take.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Custer. I do appreciate your faith. As I believe you already know, I appreciate many of your fine qualities. Your great charm, for instance, your intellect, your beauty. Beauty enough to weaken the knees of many a man less handicapped than myself. However, my dear Mrs. Custer, we cannot employ those qualities here. Now, this Mary Adams affidavit smells half as much as I think it does. We're in for more trouble, notwithstanding your great beauty and charm. So if you don't mind, I think you'd better let me talk to George.
No.
Mrs. Custer.
Mr. Jacobson, I do not care for the tone of your remarks.
You think I've insulted you? That was open flattery. Now, if I were to talk about how you use your charm, then I might get offensive. Are you going to let me talk to George?
Mr. Jacobson, you have known me for many years. And therefore you think you know me well. In fact, you don't know me at all. Luckily for the both of us, you are defending my husband and not me. Good evening, Mr. Jacobson.
Good evening.
There's nothing, sir. You know, I just don't think we're going to find anything unless we check with the records of the 7th Cavalry in Washington.
Summers, I want you to go to Washington. Find out the names of everybody who ever served on the household staff of the Custers with Mary Adams. If you can't locate Mary Adams, see if you can't find anybody who knew of her whereabouts at the time of the Little Bighorn.
I'll leave in the morning.
You leave right now. Maybe a wild goose chase, but if we don't find something, that affidavit's going to stand up in court. Go on.
My apologies for the delay, Mr. President, but I have been unable to complete the research regarding the Mary Adams affidavit. I suggest this court continue with the defense.
I would like to call to the stand Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. Colonel Custer.
Colonel, before taking the oath, I wish to remind you that you may remain silent if you so desire. If you take the stand, you'll be cross-examined like any witness, but only on evidence that you yourself have testified to under direct examination.
I shall be proud to testify.
The clerk will proceed.
Do you affirm that the evidence you shall give in the case now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Be seated, please.
Now, Colonel Custer, will you please tell the court what happened on the day of June 25th, 1876? Colonel Custer?
Sir.
Would you like to relate the events of June 25th, 1876?
The regiment marched up from the Rosebud River, following an Indian trail. The trail turned west toward the Little Bighorn and was so fresh that I was concerned that Sioux would escape.
Can you speak a little louder, sir?
when the trail turned west, I directed the regiment to follow. The written order of General Terry gave me wide latitude.
Mr. President, I'm closer to this witness than many here in the courtroom, and I simply cannot hear him.
Colonel, try to speak a little louder, please.
I felt very strongly that I should follow the trail. From an observation post that morning, I could not locate any village in the Little Bighorn Valley.
Mr. President, isn't it possible for the witness just to tell us in his own words what happened?
I'd ask you, sir, to relate from your memory, please. What happened next that day?
I kept Reno in the center and then directed him to wheel right and attack the village. It was exactly where I thought it would be. Yeah, a glass of water. I swung north, parallel to the river, when I heard the sound of fighting. Being in column, I could bring very little weight. I saw high ground to the north and prepared to make a stand. The sun went down. It's very dark, very dusty. Eyes caked. Blood, darkness. I felt nothing.
Thank you for that vivid account of your heroic struggle. Will you tell the court how long the fight lasted?
The sun went down.
Yes.
Darkness.
Yes, I know. I can understand how difficult it is for you to relive those terrible hours. Thank you for your testimony.
Colonel, please remain seated for cross-examination.
Colonel Custer, did you honestly think a force of less than 120 troopers could successfully charge an Indian village of thousands?
Command decision.
Why did you split up your troops?
Command decision.
But why?
Command decision.
Mr. President, I find the response to my question totally inadequate.
Can't put words in the colonel's mouth. Proceed.
Did you see Reno's fight there on the bluffs?
Reno ran.
Yes, but did you see him? His troopers.
Obeyed me.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Command decision!
Mr. President, I feel it's useless to continue with this witness. I find his answers completely unresponsive to the questions.
I advise you, Major, you will not have another opportunity to question the witness. Will you reconsider?
No. No more questions.
Very well. Witness is excused.
Now, just a minute. You haven't heard what Reno said to me. Reno was ordered to charge that village. He disobeyed me and he's going to rot.
The witness is
In
excused.
hell before this
George, you don't have to
city.
Quiet in the courtroom. Quiet. Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, please proceed.
The defense rests, Mr. President.
Very well. Court is in recess till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Mr. President, forgive me, but I request permission to present a rebuttal witness.
Now?
Yes, sir, if the court will permit.
Very well.
I call Sergeant William McCaskey to the witness chair. Sergeant McCaskey, when you arrived back at Fort Lincoln again, having just come from the battlefield to inform Mrs. Custer of what had happened there, was Mary Adams present?
She was, sir. In fact, Mrs. Adams spoke to me personally. And I know for fact, sir, she hadn't left the fort for over 2 months.
It would have been impossible, then, for her to have been at Fort Lincoln and with Custer in the field.
Possible, absolutely. A person can't be 2 places at once, sir. And Mary Adams was definitely with Mrs. Custer.
She could not have overheard any conversation between General Terry and Colonel Custer.
That's right, sir.
No more questions? Your witness.
I have no question.
Major, do you have any more rebuttal witnesses?
No, sir. No more witnesses.
The witness is excused. I would ask Mr. Jacobson and Major Gardner to approach the bench, please. Major, I fear you may be confused. There's obviously a person in this room at the moment that can settle the issue of Mary Adams' affidavit. I refer to Mrs. Custer. After all, she was one of the parties involved.
Yes, sir.
Although she cannot be made to testify against her husband, she can be requested to verify an affidavit. To refuse would be an admission of guilt. To answer incorrectly would be perjury.
Yes, sir.
Now then, you have every right to request that she take the stand, if you so wish.
General, I thank you for your instruction, but I feel the sergeant's statement stands by itself. I'm willing to let the matter rest at that.
Very well. Thank you, gentlemen. The court stands in recess till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Can I help you?
Yes, Major. I wish to thank you.
On that barren, dusty plain, on that day that this officer, this brave man, led his gallant troops once again into battle as he had done so many times before under the flag of his country. That day will be recorded forever in the milestones of American history. Why? Because the battle was lost. And why was it lost? Because this courageous leader was sent into that battle without the vital information he needed to complete his task. And then the butcher's bill arrived. And who must pay for that? Why, General Custer, of course. He made powerful enemies in high political circles, didn't he? Well, then put him on the block. He's a public hero. Let him take the blame. Gentlemen, I will ask you one question. It may appear to be rhetorical, but I shall pose it just the same. Would any of you, highly respected officers here, General Pope, General McDowell, would any of you take away the decisions of a commander in the field? Would you strip him of his authority? And if so, what then? Will you try all the generals who've lost the battle? Will you court-martial all generals from this time forward? Would you? Because that is exactly what you'll be doing, gentlemen, if you find this man guilty. McClellan would be sitting in this chair today for failing to take Richmond. Burnside would be there for the slaughter at Fredericksburg. And Grant at Wilderness. Grant at Spotsylvania. Grant again at Cold Harbor. Yes, Grant! 10,000 dead in one day! And I ask you, have any of you, distinguished officers, have any of you ever failed in battle? I'll not press that question, gentlemen. Not you. General Custer is on trial today. And yet I cannot help but ask myself, what is it to be then? Win or hang the commander? Win? Win or be found a criminal? Criminal. Gentlemen, you have witnessed in this courtroom a parade. A parade of every sluggard, every malcontent that this brave man has ever offended. Simply by trying to see that his duty was done. And I say to you, prejudice will rule the day in this court. If by finding that man guilty, you show to the world that in the United States, when a God fails, we Turn loose the tigers to devour it. Thank you.
I am compelled to state a very unpleasant fact. George Armstrong Custer is not fit to wear the uniform of the United States Army. If nothing else, this trial has brought that out. He is, to put it mildly, monstrously inadequate. The good name of this army can no longer be trusted to the antic convulsions of what has to be a demented mind. Mr. Jacobson has spoken here of certain generals who may have lost a battle. Can we blame them, he asks. I have no answer. But the winning or the losing of a battle is not the question here. I'm talking about duty. Yes, duty, the supreme neglect of a commander's recognized duty. We've proven to you that the Army knew, and Custer knew there were many more hostiles there than the Indian Bureau would admit. Did he therefore proceed cautiously? Did he attempt to see for himself? Did he make the slightest effort to assess the terrain or the enemy? He did not. Not even the size of the Indian village or the location. He simply plunged ahead, squandering his men through his own brashness, so eaten with greed for recognition that he had to plunge in, no matter what the odds, no matter what the cost. Greedy for the kill. 500 men against 8,000 warriors. And now half of those men lie butchered on that barren field. Finally, I would speak of ambition. For the ambition of Colonel Custer is no mystery. Even his own defense attorney has just called him a god. Well, if he is a god, then he is a dangerous god, and this army must be rid of him. The bones of every soldier buried at Little Bighorn rise up from their graves and cry out against him. No more! No more! No more of this bragging, strutting, primping peacock of a man. No more. No more Custer. In the name of justice, I beseech this court to find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
The court wishes to thank Mr. Jacobson and Major Gardner for their services. The court is now closed for deliberation.
I can do for the man who supplied me with cuspidors.
Indeed. I thought you only chewed tobacco.
No, that's only in places where I'm not allowed to smoke. I was very impressed with the way you handled the case, Major.
Thank you. But the United States Army isn't going to be impressed with anything short of a guilty verdict.
You make it sound as if the Battle of Little Bighorn may yet claim another victim. What can they do? Horsewhip you?
I think a horsewhipping might be preferable to what they have in mind.
Well, you didn't exactly make friends with General Zerbe. Why did you take the case?
I didn't. I was assigned to it.
Ah, we have something in common.
You?
Our firm has represented the Custers for years. It seems that George, being of dim mind and arrogant pretensions, always getting himself into trouble, so here I am again, whether I like it or not. And it's also useless.
Useless?
No matter how it turns out. You see, this morning, they appointed somebody else to head up the 7th Cavalry. And of course, George is broken-hearted. Worst possible thing that happened to us.
I wonder. I wonder what it's like to go marching out with an outfit like the 7th. Make decisions on the battlefield. Snap judgments that have to be made instantly. I wonder. And who the hell are we to question it?
We're waiting for the verdict, and we're taking opposite sides. Now, why don't we try him again, huh?
Once is enough.
Yes, indeed. Well, Major, may I ask you one last question of a rather personal nature?
That depends.
Of course. Why didn't you put Elizabeth Custer on the stand? She could have proved that trumped-up affidavit was fraudulent or else perjured herself denying it. So why didn't you put her on the stand?
I'm certain the court knew it was fraudulent without her testimony.
I see. Well, frankly, I think you made a big mistake. You may have to pay very dearly for that. Could it be you're attracted to the woman, Major? I'll withdraw the question. Matter of fact, I've been in love with her myself for many years. Which is probably the reason I continue to represent George. Well, good night, Major.
Be seated. The accused will rise and face the court. The court, in closed session, with 2/3 of its members concurring, find Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer of all charges and specifications not guilty.
This court is now adjourned.
As I understand it, Audie, there'll be some very important political leaders there this evening. Well, this court-martial might even turn out to be an advantage. Wouldn't that be ironic? Do you think this blue silk, darling? Audie? Is anything wrong?
Listen,
What?
along the bridge. Listen, they're coming up along the bridge.
Quickly. Move, for God's sakes.
Audie.
You, Yates, get your column up here. Oh, get it up, man. Stop that bleeding from the mouth and get your company up here.
Tom, you're going to be the death of me yet, you whiskey-drinking rounder, you sweet dog of a brother grinning at me, teasing me that you have the Medal of Honor. Stop bleeding, damn it! Stop bleeding! Damn you, stop dying! Stop it!
Oh, dear God!
I want that dead horse out of here! Get this company on high ground! Bring up the Gatling guns! Oh, look, over there, they're coming through. Coming through the trees. Close up the column. All right, let's hear it, damn your eyes. Play it. Play the Gary Owen. Tom, he's dying. My brother's dying.
It's all right, Artie. It's all right.
Dead. All dead. All of them.
Carriage is waiting outside, Mrs. Custer.
Oh, I'm sorry. General Custer is rather tired this evening. We won't be able to make the dinner. Would you please convey our apologies?
Yes, ma'am.
Lieutenant Gardner?
Yes, sir.
Come with me, please.
Colonel, if I may ask...
You may not ask, sir. Step inside.
Colonel, I've been on the road from Arizona for over a week now. I think I deserve to know...
I said step inside.
All right, Higgins, let's move.
Could I just inquire, sir?
No. Don't say a word. Just listen carefully. We have a request from Custer's wife to meet with her this afternoon. The request was made to the president himself, and he's ordered me to carry it through. That's why we brought you here. Mrs. Custer insists that you be the go-between.
Me?
We haven't any idea what she wants, but the president wouldn't put anything past George Armstrong Custer. Why, you still got the New York Herald persecuting the Army and the president, and we want an end to it now. Custer is rotting away the very foundations of this government, and we are going to get rid of him at any cost.
Yes, sir. If I could ask...
I told you we don't know what the woman wants. That's what you're going to find out.
Yes, sir. He won't be there himself?
No one's seen Custer since the trial, not even his closest friends. We are told he hasn't been feeling well. That's all we know.
Here?
Here.
Mrs. Custer?
Major Gardner.
Lieutenant Gardner.
Indeed. Oh, I'm sorry that things could not have turned out better for you.
Well, I always wanted to get out in the field.
There was never a chance to thank you properly in the courtroom.
To thank me? I tried to have your husband thrown in prison.
I don't think you tried hard enough, or you would have had me placed on the witness stand. But that doesn't matter anymore. I have a proposition to bring to the Army. As you know, the Army, of course, has been my husband's life, and mine too. From those first years in Texas when we lived every day out of an Army ambulance, the both of us. We moved from one fort to another like gypsies, but always, my dear husband did everything to make me comfortable. I still remember those evenings in Texas with the mockingbirds singing in the pecan groves near our camp at Hempstead. We crossed Texas so often I knew every bump and rock and dry stream bed with the dust, clouds of dust everywhere. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a Cheyenne war party would appear. A brutal life, sometimes terrifying. The cholera, the pox, scorpions, the flash floods. But there were the good moments, the happy moments. Well, the dances we held at the fort, the band huffing and puffing to a polka, and my dear sweet husband, who always found his pleasure in the company of women.
Mrs. Custer.
Oh, it's all right. I don't mind discussing the women. I never did mind, you know. The women. How they flocked to him. How they adored him. He was a flame, and they flew as close as they dared. Never realizing that the flame was without heat. How were they to know that my George loved only the hunt and never the kill? He was quite incapable of the kill. What a disappointment to those beautiful women. Am I embarrassed? I'm sorry. Oh, it's unfortunate, I think, that we could not have met under other circumstances.
Mrs. Custer.
Ah, there you have it. Mrs. Custer. I am devoted to my husband, you see. And having revealed a secret that now only you and I now share with George, I think you can understand the full measure of that devotion. I have here a letter of resignation from the Army, signed by my husband. The Army may have it on one condition. As a soldier, let's call it horse trading. Or there's something that I want in return. What I want, what George wants, is the Congressional Medal of Honor. I know that won't be easy. But you tell them, as soon as they get things moving in Congress, George has authorized me to date and publish the resignation. That's all there is, Major. Lieutenant. Is the proposition clear?
Clear.
We won't meet again, I think.
No.
Well, what do they want? Did you hear me, sir? I'm asking you, what do they want?
You said at any cost.
At any cost.
The Congressional Medal of Honor.
My God.
Everything's going to be all right. Didn't I tell you? Everything's